Hi, r.w.forder here. Thomas Paine, the 9th of February 1737 to the 8th of June 1809. Knowing where to start in any attempt to explain the emergence of a secularist radical tradition is bound to be controversial, but I've got to start somewhere. I've decided to start with Thomas Paine, not because he was entirely original, but because it was he who first articulated ideas to a mass audience, ways they could understand and relate to. While briefly explaining and outlining his life and career, my main purpose is to make an assessment of his importance and his huge legacy. Here we have a portrait of Paine by Bradlaugh. Paine was born in Thetford, Norfolk on the 9th of February 1737. He received some education at Thetford Grammar School and served an apprenticeship as a staymaker, making the thick rope stays used on sailing ships. In 1759 he married, but was soon struck by disaster as his business collapsed and his wife and child both died. He then became an exciseman, and in 1772 joined other excise officers in asking for better pay and conditions, and wrote what proved to be his first political work, a 12-page article entitled The Case for the Officers of Excise. In 1773, he was dismissed as an excise officer and separated from his second wife, Elizabeth. He moved to London, where he was introduced to Benjamin Franklin, who persuaded him to emigrate to the American colonies. Consequently, on the 30th of November 1774, Paine arrived in Philadelphia and soon found employment as editor of the Pennsylvania Magazine, at a time where the American Revolution was erupting with Philadelphia at its very heart. In January 1776, Paine wrote a work called Common Sense, which crystallized sentiment for independence and sold about 500,000 copies. Paine made the case for independence, republicanism, and divorce from corrupt, tyrannical, and hereditary monarchy. His critique of the British King George III was eviscerating. Paine wrote in a style ordinary people could understand, and his ideas spread through public readings. His voice was the voice of revolution. Soon after, in 1776, Paine published the American Crisis series of pamphlets to inspire Americans. General George Washington had it read aloud to his soldiers. Remember, many of those soldiers were illiterate. This is what he wrote. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. In 1787, Paine returned to London, where he soon found himself in controversy, defending the French Revolution from Edmund Burke. To this end, he published Rights of Man, a broad political manifesto advocating representative government, wide-ranging social programmes and progressive taxation. At its heart was the tenet that governments exist to serve their citizens. Citizens do not exist to serve monarchical and aristocratic masters. Paine had become the great bogeyman. The British establishment was terrified of the French Revolution and everything it represented. Paine was indicted for seditious libel, and government agents instigated mobs, hate meetings, and burnings in effigy. Became quite a sport. Paine was chased out of the country in fear of his life. He crossed the Channel and arrived in France a hero, where he was granted honorary citizenship and elected to the National Convention. Quite a contrast. Despite his support for the revolution, Paine was increasingly viewed with suspicion, particularly by Robespierre, particularly after he pleaded for clemency for Louis XVI, suggesting he should be exiled to the United States rather than executed. Paine tried to keep his mind off the spreading terror by writing. He had long planned to write on religion, and now he wrote The Age of Reason. I quote from the early pages. I believe in the equality of man, and I believe that religious duties consist in doing justice, loving mercy, and endeavouring to make our fellow creatures happy. I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish Church, by the Roman Church, by the Greek Church, by the Turkish Church, by the Protestant Church, nor by any church that I know of. My own mind is my own church. All national institutions of churches appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. I'm going to repeat just one short sentence from that because it is so important to his legacy. My own mind is my own church. It's important to note that Paine was not an atheist. He was a deist who believed in God but considered Christianity an invention and an intrusion between humankind and the deity. On the 28th of November 1793, Paine was arrested and imprisoned in the Luxembourg jail. The terror was in full swing. Each day, prisoners were taken to the guillotine, and Paine only narrowly escaped. The legend is that a chalk mark was supposed to be left by the jailer on the cell door of those due for execution. In Paine's case, the mark had been made on the inside of the door because it was open, as he had been receiving visitors. Therefore, he was missed the next day. Soon afterwards, Robespierre fell, and after 10 months' imprisonment, Paine was released. In 1802, Paine returned to the USA, but memories were short, and his role in the War of Independence had largely been forgotten. What is more, The Age of Reason horrified many Americans, and he was loathed by some of them. Thomas Paine died on the 8th of June 1809. His body was transported to New Rochelle, where he had planned to be buried in the Quaker graveyard. However, the Quakers would not allow this, so he was buried under a walnut tree on the farm he'd been given many years before due to his contribution to the revolution. His funeral was attended by just a handful of people. Few have been more maligned after their death than Paine. As soon as he was dead, rumours circulated that he'd recanted his religious beliefs. It was said he was a foul-mouthed drunk. Teddy Roosevelt called him a dirty little atheist. 3 words, and each one was wrong. So, why is Paine so important, and what is his legacy? Well, first, he wrote in colourful and stirring prose ordinary people could understand and relate to. As I said earlier, many of those who lived during his era were illiterate and depended on public readings, which needed clear exposition and straightforward language. Most of Paine's ideas can be found in the writings of philosophers and commentators who came before him. In particular, Paine was influenced by John Locke. But Paine moulded these different writings into a coherent whole and really translated them for the ordinary person. Second, Paine made out the radical reformist case that was to be echoed throughout the 19th century. Richard Carlile, George Jacob Holyoake, Charles Bradlaugh, and Annie Besant all drew inspiration from him. He has influenced, either directly or indirectly, all those who in any way subscribe to a British radical tradition, whether they know it or not. Third, Paine championed the idea of the essential equality of humankind. This does not mean that he thought all should have equal incomes, although he did believe that the state should offer a sort of basic financial security to its citizens. Paine's equality was more about equality of rights, and it's worthy of note that the first tract that he wrote when he arrived in America voiced his opposition to slavery. Fourth, and finally, specifically, Paine pioneered the secularist aspiration that government and lawmaking should be carried out not in the name of religion, not for religion, but on rational grounds, and that no religious group should have particular privileges. Paine challenged religious privilege. I like this cartoon by Heston Watson, depicting Paine's great writings as cannons destroying superstition and tyranny. There are many biographies of Thomas Paine, although my favourite is by John Keane, Thomas Paine, A Political Life. There are also several memorials to Paine in the UK, of which the most impressive is this statue in Thetford, where the town museum also has an interesting permanent exhibition. Thank you for watching. If you want to contact me, my email address is r.w.forder r.w.forder@btinternet.com.